you got to turn them all on.
Oh.
On-off switch on the top. Good, so yep, very good on that. Regular mic should be in the accessory drawer back there. It says accessory drawer on there. There. Same thing on those. There's an on-off switch on them. And you want to leave them off until you're ready because you don't.
So, Oh, ha ha. Hello, hello. And I can do the moderating of the
Okay.
question, whatever they call it. Oh, and I got the time wrong. It's actually only 2 to 2:50, 2 to 3. So it's
Okay.
50 minutes. Yeah, you're good. We better get moving.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming to our panel this afternoon. I would like to, I'm Cindy Mello Silver. I am the current Barbara B. Jacobs Chair in Education and Technology. And we are delighted to have our 2019 Jacobs educators here. The Jacobs Educator Program celebrates K through 12 teachers who are innovators in using technology. And more than that, these teachers are not just using technology, but they're using it in special ways to support problem-based and inquiry learning activities in their classrooms. And we've got teachers that range from elementary school through middle school, junior high, and high school. I think that covers all of you. And I think we will now let them introduce themselves.
So, hi, I'm Tom Brush. I'm Jacobs Chair Emeritus.
Once
And
removed?
yeah, I'm not Professor Emeritus yet, but someday. Um, and so what we're going to start with is we're going to start with some brief introductions from our Jacobs educators. And then we have just a few questions that we're in order to begin a discussion about inquiry-based learning, particularly and how technology can support that. And so we have a few questions prepared for the Jacobs educators. And then after that, we'll open it up to a discussion, questions from the audience and so forth. And I can MC the questions and so on as we go. So if we could ask each Jacob educator to briefly provide a little introduction to them, who they are, what they teach, where you're from, those kinds of things.
My name is Leon Tynes. I just moved from Connecticut to Arizona. While in Connecticut, I was teaching at an engineering and science magnet school in New Haven, Connecticut, with a heavy focus on STEM. Now I'm in it's a science and math school. It's a charter school in Arizona, and they're focusing on STEM, but they are kind of at the beginning stages of the school. It's only been open for 6 months. One of the big challenges is ELL integration. 95% of our students are Hispanic. And so there's a big language problem also, and they want to do STEM with that. So I am teaching now K through 8 technology and working on vertical alignment.
My name's Anita Mendes, and I teach 7th and 8th science at a private school, small private school in Indianapolis. And, just a personal story is that I grew up in a household with just one computer that everybody shared. And the day I got my smartphone, my life changed as an educator. And that's why I'm here today to share that story. So thank you.
My name is Amanda Moore. I'm a fourth grade teacher in the Indianapolis area, and my classroom can be described as gamified and blended, and also we do passion projects, and this year passion projects, thinking about it as an inquiry-based, allowing students to find their interests. Technology has really helped me to support kids in finding what they're passionate about, so that they enjoy learning and so that they want to come to school. So that's my deal.
I would like to do that. My name is Kirsten Milks. I teach high schoolers here in Bloomington, Indiana. So I teach AP biology, mostly to juniors and seniors. And then I teach people in high school for whom school has been challenging. And that's earth and space science in my context. And I co-teach that with a special education teacher. I'm actually a pretty late technology adapter. That's part of my history with thinking about how technology can serve learning. But what I love about the ways we can use technology in a science class is that we can use it to provide students authentic science practice. So they get authentic science skills practice in ways that would definitely not be possible. My classroom can also be described as flipped. And I also, in my other kind of hat in thinking about how teachers communicate, I like thinking about how we can use the internet and digital tools to help teachers collaborate and communicate and share ideas.
I'm Becky Hillenberg, and I teach 7th grade, 8th grade in at Edgewood Elementary School or junior high, and that is in Ellettsville, about 20 minutes from here. And I would agree that I was kind of late to the technology thing myself. I think it was out of fear. I'm a 20-year teacher and just have not, that just wasn't part of everything that we were doing when I started. And so I was a little fearful to put myself out there, and I'm very thankful that I did. I had a principal that said, hey, you're gonna do this. And I did, and fell in love with the robotics aspect of it. And yeah, I would agree that seeing how technology has allowed me to communicate with my students on a different level than I had before, because that is their entire life is technology. And so that was a good connection for me. It's the Richland Bean Blossom is our school system, and we have a STEM initiative, and I run a STEAM club in the junior high, and we're also problem-based learning forward. And so to be able to put those all together has been awesome. And yeah.
I can hand off the microphone.
Oh, that's a great idea. We're tag teaming here. Okay, well, thank you very much for those wonderful introductions. What we have is we prepared 3 kind of general questions for our Jacobs educators to respond to. So we're going to ask them kind of one at a time, each of these questions, and have them respond. And then after we're done with our 3 general questions, as I said, we're going to open it up to you folks. Any questions that you have, we'll be able to provide you with a forum for asking our Jacobs educators. So our first question that we'd like to ask our Jacobs educators today is to have them talk about how technology supports inquiry-based learning specifically in your classroom. And in particular, I think people would be interested in any examples that you have of how you've integrated and utilized technology in your classes to support inquiry.
I kind of want to tell you the story about the robotics thing. So I was the only teacher teaching a STEM course in the day for my school, and the principal that we had at the time said, there's a group from IU that wants to come into classrooms and do robotics. You're going to do that. And I was like, okay, let's do that. And I was very scared, and it was a 4-year journey. And Andy was my researcher with me, and it has just been amazing. So what we did, we combined technology and problem-based learning in the way that we did a human-centered robotics unit. It was a 5-week course, and the students were looking for a way to meet local needs. And so we would have teachers that came up with some needs in our community. The ones that they came up with mostly were, what was surprising, of all the school shootings that we've heard about. And one day when we were deciding about what kind of robots we wanted to do was a day where our school had a lockdown, and it was very scary for the middle school kids. And so they identified the problem as nobody was really prepared for that to be a real situation, which it turned out to just be a visitor in the school that didn't have a badge on. So the students realized that there wasn't continuity among teachers. So that first integration of the curriculum, they chose to address how to make sure that all teachers were out of hallways, because our principals had to go throughout the hallways and try to find where the intruder was. So the kids picked up on that, and they wanted to design a robot that would do that so that all personnel could be covered. Our last integration of this, they had clients, and most of them chose a client where they wanted to assist students with special needs out of the building during a lockdown event or an emergency event. So they created robots for clients that would address the needs of students with disabilities, helping them to get out of the building. Also, there was one group that did a what was I thinking? It was for a counselor that wanted to give students a way to get out of the classroom for a few minutes if they were escalated and needed some downtime. So we had students that created a robot to address that need. So they made robots that were very appealing to kids their age. So just being able to put it in the kids' hands and let them run with it, even though it was scary. But if you let them run it, it's inquiry based, and they get all the technology they need out of it.
Powerful, like, context for that work. So I have a PhD in molecular science. You need to know this about me for this next part of this story. When I started teaching in the high school classroom, I didn't really know anything about being outside, right? Like, I grew up outside of Albany, New York. My parents had a garden. That's it, right? So when I moved to Bloomington and I start teaching AP biology, my class is really molecularly focused because that's the stuff I know how to do. And those are classroom experiences I can give kids really easily. And then I have my own little kids added to my family. So right now I've got somebody who's almost 5, and I've got somebody who's 2.5. And I realized that there's this part of my childhood about being outside that actually continued, although I kind of forgot about it when I was in the lab every day for all this time. I kind of forgot how important that was to my own personal development. And so using a whole bunch of resources that educators have shared online, and asking some really pointed questions from people who are mentoring me, my students and I have developed this year-long field experience. Sometimes people call them sit spots. And so my AP biology students pick a spot. Most of the time it's in their backyard or their side yard or a friend's yard or the park, places where they've grown up if they've grown up in Bloomington. And every month they go and they do something else at that spot. And sometimes it's silly. So in December, they have to take somebody else outside in the dark, right? And so there's silliness and camaraderie about that. But in October, for example, when we're studying the stuff that living things are made from, so we're studying biomolecules and structures, They bring some things in, they show them to somebody, and then that person tells them a story about a time that they were outside. So while it's directly linked to content, and it is firmly linked to content, I'm not giving you the examples where I'm like, where does the energy come from? The thing that ends up happening is that as they write their digital products up and store them and synthesize their year-long journey in May, they're finding out things about the outside world and thinking about connecting them to our classroom in ways that I couldn't. I teach at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's dark outside until about 9:30 for most of the time that I teach my class. And so I thought that this would be a really awesome way for students to do some of the authentic science practices that you can't do in the classroom, right? So in biology, there are kind of three ways of knowing. You know because somebody did things in a lab, you know because somebody did things in a computer, or you know because somebody did observational biology in the real world, in a real world context. I love using computers to help students scaffold their thinking about the lab. We use a lot of digital simulations in both classes, but digital tools, actually kind of traditional digital tools, helped my students be able to bring pieces of themselves and the natural world to share with each other every month, and also to integrate into their more traditional learning.
That sounds awesome. Okay, so in the fourth grade world, it's a little different than AP Bio. Okay, in the fourth grade world, thinking back to passion projects, students get to think about something that they're interested in or discover something that they're interested in. And what technology really helped us to do is not only learn and do things with and through technology that would otherwise be impossible. But then my students were empowered to create something and share that something with a global audience. So my students chose topics this year. I mean, they're 9 and 10 years old, and they chose topics like, how does somebody become homeless? What about girls in other countries? Why can't they go to school? Why does slavery still exist today in other parts of the world? And so we were able to use tools like Google Voyager to visually explore different parts of the world. We used Skype for the classroom, and we talked with activist Celine Cousteau and learned about the work that she's doing. And so we were able to kind of virtually travel, also with some virtual reality, Google Cardboard, and do some of those things to kind of explore and learn. And then with their learning, my students decided to do something with it. So they created websites, and they made songs, and they wrote books, and they made stories about people who might be in situations like this, and what they might be feeling, in order to build empathy with their peers who don't know that this is an issue. We also, non-technology wise, did a care project for the homeless people in our city, and we made care bags for people in poverty in our own community. So what I love about technology integration with 9 and 10-year-olds is that they can learn, and then they still have that indefinable thing inside of them where they believe that they can make a difference. And with technology, they really can, because they can reach such a big audience, and they can publish their work, and they can reach so much farther beyond just the walls of our classroom or even the walls of our school. And so in my classroom, technology is really kind of used to do things that otherwise would be impossible, and then to publish student work on a large scale.
Okay, so I try to use technology in the classroom in the context of social problems. I do that because I think it makes math and science more accessible to the kids. So I'll just talk about the high altitude balloon launch lesson. It's the lesson that I made my 2-minute video on. And you can launch a balloon and you can learn a lot of science, and you can say it's a weather balloon project, and you can attack it from a lot of different cool angles. But I wanted a social problem because I think my students can relate to that better. So Google has a real life project going on to deliver internet connectivity to people who are, what do you say? Like who have been cut off from family because of a natural disaster, like a hurricane. So like Hurricane Maria. And so just showing just asking kids, okay, why is internet so important to you? And just imagine a day without the internet. I mean, they're freaked out. I don't think they could handle it. And then to try to get them to put themselves in the shoes of people who, don't know if their family is alive or they want to tell their family they made it through the hurricane. So, that's a social problem. And honestly, that's what science and technology is here to solve problems in society. And so to make it in a real social context for them, that's what I try to do. And they learn a lot of science no matter how you do it. You launch a balloon, they're going to learn a lot of science and math, but it makes it seem less intimidating. They have a personal motivation to get over the hump of figuring out, well, how much helium do I need in the balloon? Or, how do I make sure this probe, this little flight computer is collecting temperature and pressure data? So it makes them feel it. Honestly, as a teacher, I felt like I was some director in NASA trying to like coordinate all these groups and teams. And it makes them feel like that because we're working with constraints that are beyond our control, the weather and administrators and timelines and public holidays and lots of different things. And it is really a learning experience like no other. And you can learn science with low tech activities, but just giving the kids, at least from the demographics of where I teach, an opportunity to get hands-on with some high technology and build some confidence with math and science, that is more of a blessing for me, I think, than for them.
How do I follow that? So in Connecticut, I was working with 6th through 12th grade, and I taught different technology subjects. So basically, I was giving them the tools to do all types of projects, and it didn't matter what discipline it was in. So I always told them that technology is the tool, it is not the content. So I'm not teaching technology as a content piece. So our projects always had to identify some type of content. So we had a school-wide initiative to participate in the Connecticut Student Innovation Expo. So all the science teachers and all the tech teachers, we had to have projects to take to this big exhibition space where the students had to have a booth and they had to do the presentations. And it was really like I don't know, some kind of big exposition, some of the conferences that we go to in education. And I've done that for 7 years. And it can be very complex managing multiple groups. But we had an extremely high rate of success doing so because we didn't make it optional. So a lot of those things were intertwined within the curriculum. So I did have parents that said, oh, well, my child doesn't want to. Okay, well, that's a choice, but there's going to be a grade associated with that. That's not so pleasant. So, but we got a lot of buy-in over the years, and we won almost every category we ever went up for. But that really came in trying to drive that passion in the teachers regarding technology. And there were so many multifaceted things that they had to do. So it wasn't just coding, it wasn't just digital media, it wasn't just one paradigm. These projects had a 7-page rubric. So they had to do social media, they had to have a website, they had to have some type of interactive thing, whether it's an animation or a simulation. So there were so many different aspects. So even though we did these things, 3D modeling, you had to have so many other technology aspects to even just qualify to have a booth at the exposition. So those types of challenges really kind of gave my kids the hunger, and we started looking for other things to do, as well as that one summative challenge, so that we entered things like Verizon App Challenge, the Congressional App Challenge, the Paradigm Challenge, Samsung Solve for Tomorrow. And they all won all of those things, but it's become a course of practice. So when we'd win it, I was like, okay, well, I'm not surprised anymore because we do this all the time. Invention convention, all of those things are just starting to be a routine, and it gets the kids in a different mindset of, yeah, we can do these large summative projects. We can collaborate. And that's the thing about, I think for me, technology, there's no excuse. You didn't miss school, great. Get on FaceTime. And I would actually teach with like a couple kids on FaceTime. And they can, Google Hangout, they could chat. So I think technology changes the way that we communicate and the way that teachers can actually facilitate that communication. Projects like this.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you for making me inspired and at the same time feel inadequate as a teacher. No, just kidding. Anyway, next question. Now that we've heard about all these exciting projects and ideas, let's talk about challenges. So the question is, what are some of the challenges that you face in implementing, starting up these projects, integrating technology in your class, integrating inquiry in your class? What are challenges have you faced, and how have you addressed those challenges? Go.
They're all going to share this. Administration. And please, I'm not anti-administration. I loved my principal. But we've got to also understand that the minds behind education are usually 10 years behind the technology that's coming out for education. So when I would go to IST or Computer Science Teachers Association conference and everything, there would be no administrators. So they didn't know what I was talking about. When I came back and I'm energetic, we could do this, this, this. And they just don't get it. They just don't understand. They're completely out of that. And it's not just at the school level, it's at the district level, at the management level. None of those administrators would go to these conferences, and I'd find creative ways to get them to fund. And no, it's a conflict. I'm just like, okay, but you want to buy all these Chromebooks, you want to buy different devices, and you don't know how to deploy them. You don't know instructionally what you need to have, what type of standards that you need to have in the classroom for the teacher to use them effectively and not just access the internet. Because I think there are a lot of examples here of going deeper into using technology in the classroom. So what happens is that there's a cart, great, check your email, access Google Classroom, that's it. That's not successful technology integration. So when they're out of the conversation like that, when they're just making decisions based off of a contract or a license agreement, I think that they lose the why, and the teachers are on the front lines with that. But we need more administrators that are actually going to go to a conference or go to a seminar that's going on outside here. We see a lot of teachers, but we don't see administrators, so they don't understand the why. Why do we need the technology? Usually they do it to tick a checkbox on a state initiative, and that's just not enough.
So yeah, I agree. I think one of the biggest challenges is financial resources, and that's why, being a Jacobs Educator recipient, I'm very grateful for the stipend we get to put towards technology in the classroom. Another thing is, for me, is just having a community of teachers to collaborate and brainstorm and just grow with. I'm the only middle school science teacher in my school, so it's I think that for me is one struggle. And the last one, which is actually I think a big one, is if you're the only one doing these sorts of integration activities, students at first are very afraid of failing. And I think now that our school is adopting more STEM, and more teachers are getting on board and trying these activities with the kids realize what the process looks like and are sort of understanding that failure is part of the process and getting a little less afraid to fail. So for me, that was a big challenge when we first did it. I mean, even personally speaking, when I first did the high altitude balloon launch, I was afraid of failing. I mean, it's a $1,000 project, which for some schools is peanuts. For our school, it was the biggest project, expense-wise that we were doing. And if this fails, boy, is my principal going to be mad. And it did fail. And it was the kids actually who found a way to get one more balloon and do it again. And so, yeah, I mean, there are struggles, but I think the more you do it, I think the kids learn a lot from it and grow from it.
One challenge that I notice with my students, so they're 9 and 10, is that they are in the mindset of Netflix. And so anytime that they're learning something, so I have a blended learning classroom, so part of their instruction is online through online lessons and content that I've created over a couple years. They really have to be taught how to learn with digital tools. We expect students, we call them digital natives or whatever you want to call them, we expect them just to be able to do it because they're comfortable with devices. But being comfortable with a device is so very different than learning just with a device, because there are so many skills that they need in order to be successful. So I think I expected that at first. When I first started the blended learning in my classroom, I expected them to know how to learn online. And it really took some time for me to help them develop problem-solving skills so that I didn't have to be right next to them all of the time, that they could feel confident in trying to solve their own problems, because there are always problems when you're using technology. And then how to learn with an online video that I've created for them, and realizing that they don't have to use it in the same way as their neighbor. So kind of empowering students to take a personalized approach, like encouraging student agency, and then teaching those skills for learning online wasn't something that I had really considered, but has been really critical to make online learning meaningful for my students.
This is just like bouncing the same ideas over and over again, so I want to say that. But when I was asked this question, there are two from me. And so the first one is, oftentimes, I think in part because we want to check some boxes or we don't want the thing to fail, we use the technology for the technology's sake, right? And the thing that educators and students need time to do together is figure out, what's this thing good for? Or, the other option is to say, okay, these are our goals. What are available tools out there that can help us meet the goals? I have been in some schools and talked to some colleagues who have teachers in the classroom who are really invested in technology education, and their kids are doing worksheets without the piece that makes a lesson student-centered when you use technology. So I think that's the first piece, is that teachers need time, and obviously, like oftentimes with their students when it's the best, to be able to say, okay, what things do we want to be able to do? What dispositions do we want to be able to build? What skills do we want you to be able to build? And then say, okay, what are things that can fill that need? And oftentimes, people who are developing educational technology develop something that they see as a full course meal, like from soup to nuts. It does this thing. And so often, the experiences of my students, the other curriculum pieces they're having, the constraint of what's happening in our classroom means that they're not plug and play for me. So that like backwards planning aspect, I think, is one really important thing. And we need time to prototype. And our students need to be comfortable prototyping, which, we've all kind of said, but like teachers need the flexibility and time to be able to say, I'm going to deploy this. It's going to be suboptimal. I can't fix it if I don't know how to do it. The New York Times has a Sunday learning section every once in a while. There's a beautiful article this week about scripting what a robotics coach says to some elementary school kids about picking themselves off from some losses in a tournament. And although I don't think that grit is the solution to our students' most vulnerable students being successful in school and in learning, I also think positioning it as saying, this is a prototype, you're building this. My educational experience, because of my specific teaching context and what I teach, I've often been the only person teaching it, which is often a curse, but in this specific way has been really lovely because I can give myself the freedom to say, like today, I was like, okay, advanced biology students, last week I have learned of this thing where instead of a college bracket of college basketball teams that play for a winner, some nerds have made one about animals battling. And so we're going to do that together. Let's go. And I thought I would really have to sell this project. And within 10 minutes, they were on their computers shouting facts at each other about which animal they thought would be the boss king, right? So that ability to prototype, to say, okay, I'm gonna try this, let's see what's happening, and giving people the time to refine it, and not expecting that you're gonna be able, as an administrator, to walk into a technology classroom and see something that you can understand straight away as being of high quality. That it takes this background information and a knowledge of where you are in the process to be able to evaluate and to analyze what's happening in the space. Those are my two big ones.
All of that. I think a lot of times the challenges from a teacher standpoint is training. A lot of times they throw these new things out there, these technology. Yes, training teachers. Because you are thrown a different program every Wednesday morning at a meeting that you have, and then you don't develop you don't get trained in those programs that that we need to be using in our classes. And I think that is one of the biggest. Another is having resources that for us to do some of these amazing things in our classrooms. We have to scrape and just figure out where can we get these supplies to do that. So sometimes that is a barrier for us too. And what I've learned is that students are going to figure it out before I do. And so I have to be comfortable enough in saying, hey, we're going to use this with the robotics unit. I had no idea about coding, nothing. I had never even, I looked at code.org, and that was for little kids kind of thing. So I didn't know what I was doing, but the kids looked at it, took them 10 minutes, and they were programming. And so I would come over and ask, oh, how did you do that? And they'd say, well, this is how I did it. So they were teaching me those skills. And I think you have to be open to that occurring in your classroom. You have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to just tell your kids, I don't know the answer to that, but let's find out together. Or if you find out, let me know, since I don't have a chance right now to look at it. So you just have to be open to, and when you are faced with challenges, don't give up, because you're always going to run into a challenge, but just don't be afraid to do it.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for discussing those challenges. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit. We have about a little bit less than 10 minutes left. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to save the last question, time allotted. But I'd like to give our audience an opportunity. If anyone has a question they'd like to ask the Jacobs educators, I'd like to give an opportunity for you to do that. So if you have a question, raise your hand and I will provide the opportunity for you to ask the question via microphone. And we will start with Dr. Kwan, if that's all right with everyone. Okay.
Recently, I observed one elementary school classroom. It's a 6th grade, and I support coding lessons. And while we are expected was a kind of a good collaboration among the kids and they develop the project. Actually, I saw many good collaboration, but I also saw some interesting collaboration. The thing is, actually, there is a 3 persons in a group and the 2 persons work together and the 1 person just observe it. So actually the person observer was a woman, so girl. So I asked the 3 guys, so here the girl is now the leader. So let's work together. And still the 2 boys work together and giggled at each other, so, something like that. So that kind of thing, I want to see more good collaboration, but while I'm looking at that, not successful collaboration, interaction between the kids, do you have that kind of experience? And how did you solve it?
For me, the engine that runs my classroom is classroom community. And so all the other stuff about science, all the other things about what it looks like to be an intellectual in the space that we're in, they all start with us, the work, the actual like content in the year of my classroom. And I think it's true for elementary teachers also. It like starts really slow. If you came into my classroom in August or even September, you would say, wow, they're spending a long time doing this task. But we're developing those collaborative skills. I think the other thing for older kids is that I never grade them. I think 3 times this year, I will grade my older students on things they do together. The learning happens together and the grading happens individually. But we'll do things. There's a procedure we use where we talk about leaning in and leaning out. And so if I see somebody who's going to lean in or 2 heads that are going to come together, we'll talk about leaning back and leaning forward into a task. So, but that polishing of those routines again and again, they are, I think, what allows me to be able to do that technology work.
Everybody has.
In my classroom, within the first week, we set up class norms and we set up group norms. So I put up questions about what is it that when you're working in a group, what makes you uncomfortable, what makes you comfortable. So they have a series of questions that they're going to answer. And then from there, I look at all of the answers and categorize them, and then we create norms. One of the things that we did with that robotics unit, and specifically, is that we noticed that we had issues with that very thing. And so we set up norms based on what the students were telling us they needed in order to work in a group and collaborate together. So what they need is what we provided them. And the biggest, what I heard from almost every single student was, I want my voice heard. So that was our #1 rule, is that everyone's voice must be heard, and that you can't critique them. Everybody's going to share, and you're going to work together to come to a conclusion or collaborate in a way so you could compromise, so that everybody has some feeling of assurance in what they're doing as a group. So for me, it is establishing norms in the classroom based on what my students want and need to cultivate that.
So, like Kirsten said, classroom community is just so important, especially when we are asking kids every day to try something new and to take a risk. They really have to have this underlying feeling of trust and safety. And so one thing that really helps me build that with my young students is my gamified classroom. And it's just so much fun. We laugh together every day. We do silly things together. And they care about one another's learning because they all depend on one another to do well within our gamified like world, I guess. And so that's one way that I help to build positive community. And then another is, so I have an inclusion classroom, which means I have some students with some special needs. And this year, quite a few with communication needs. And so at the beginning of the year, we took time and I taught soft skills. I taught them how to communicate, and I gave them sentence starters for when they run into conflict working with groups. And so when I saw conflict arise, I could come over and help mediate, but now they don't need me to do that. They're comfortable disagreeing most of the time in respectful ways. And then also we end each of our big collaborative times together by complimenting each other. So we have to find something that somebody else did well, so that we all leave feeling good about the work that we did, so that the next time we return to it, everybody is buying into it. And then finally, the last thing that I think is super important is choice. When students are really interested in what they're doing and what they're creating, they're motivated to do it, even in spite of conflict and disagreements with their group.
I'll just say I mean, I feel like I'm just going to repeat what they all said, but in 8th grade, boys want to work with the girls, I'm just saying. So, but it's all about setting, I mean, I have nothing new to say. It's all about setting up norms at the beginning of the year. And this has nothing to do with math or science content. It's just about, as a human being, how do you want kids to feel in your classroom, safe, comfortable. It's about giving kids choices to make their partner groups, at least with older kids. I feel like we can do that. And just being flexible as a teacher.
Mine's very quick, pair programming, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Dr. Kwan, where they switch off roles on the computers, or whatever the task is, they switch and take turns. So they pretty much don't have a choice but to collaborate in order to achieve the goal. And then, I now working really well with K through 2 right now. It's really good. They love the switch because I scream it in classrooms, so they just love it. So.
Okay, I think we have time for one more quick question. Anybody have one more question they'd like to ask our Jacobs educators?
Anybody from who's Zooming in?
Have a question? Okay, to close out then, talk to us about what would be your one piece of advice that you'd give teachers, fellow educators, in terms of being successful in utilizing technology in their classroom, supporting inquiry in their classroom.
Quick story is by my 3rd year, I was ready to leave education because I was depending on my district and my school to provide the PD and the opportunities that I needed. So my advice and it's just get out there and realize that education is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There are a lot of things and resources and stuff out there that teachers can get involved with to make a kind of their own personal community. And, I told my boss after going to the conferences and all these different things, I said, I'm sorry, a PLN is much more powerful than a PLC. Much more powerful. And that's why I'm still in education today. So I'd say just get out of.
I'm just going to copy Nike and say, just do it. There are, you've heard a common thread through a lot of us about how we feel we arrived late at the technology scene in our classrooms. And you've heard 5 different things of how you can incorporate technology in the room. So just try one of them out. Go do it.
Those would be my 2 main pieces of advice. And to say a little more on Leon's topic is it can be very lonely doing it on your own if you don't have like-minded educators within your own building. And so 2 solutions for that. One would be finding your tribe. Like, I feel like I've met some really awesome educators today, guys. I feel like we really bonded. And so finding other educators who are also wanting to do this, they'll have great advice and great support, and they'll be able to encourage you on those tough days, and then also take somebody with you. So there are lots of educators, with you in your building, and if they don't already have that mindset, help them find it. And so it's always better doing things together. It's much more difficult to go it alone. So find somebody else and then bring somebody close by with you.
I think so. There's this practice in Japan where educators meet together from different schools and different contexts, and they study one lesson, 1 day to 3 days of instruction, so deep for so many years that people live and breathe this lesson. And I think what I've learned in my context is that doing one thing new ripples through the rest of my teaching practice. So I think there's language about gamifying your classroom. You can gamify 3 days, right? There's this idea of being able to start small and granular and know that you'll start to see some new ideas or some fresh perspectives from other places in your curriculum, and that it takes time.
Don't be afraid to fail. It is okay for you to fail, and it's okay for you to fail in front of your students, because that's how they learn to persevere. That's how they learn to fail and pick themselves up. So try it, and if you fail, just say, okay, what can I do better next time? Or show them, be the example that failure is not the worst thing that can happen. You learn from your failures, and just don't be afraid for that to happen to you.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to our Jacobs educators for a wonderful, enlightening panel. Even though we only had 50 minutes, it seemed to go by like 5 minutes. If we could give our Jacobs educators a round of applause and thank them for participating. And I think we have, what do we have, one more session? 2 more sessions. 1 session and 1 keynote left. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Everyone. Hello, everyone. Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Can you hear me? It says my speaker's doing fine. I don't necessarily trust that it is. Someone say something.
Hello. Hi.
Hear
Can you
me?
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Craig, are you?
I want to double check.
Here too. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Maybe it's time now. Maybe we can start. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome to our academics panel. We have a tremendous panel here in person and virtually, and I really appreciate all you being here. And also I appreciate all you, the audience here. So the goal of this session is going to help the students who are currently in our program who want to pursue for the academic job to get some experience from our alumni. So here is how the 15 minutes going to work. So first, I will invite all the panelists to introduce themselves. After that, I will ask the questions I have prepared for. And then at the end, we will have 20 minutes for the question and answer. So you can ask questions I have already asked. Maybe you have some follow-up questions, or you can ask a question that we didn't address during the previous time. Then if you have any questions during our conversation, please make sure make a notes and then ask the questions in the last 20 minutes. So first, maybe I would like to invite all the panel to introduce yourself. How about let's start with the in-person Dr. Gray first, and then we will go to the online panels.
Okay, this is perfect because then Craig and Rod can tell me how poorly I did in my introduction.
It was horrible.
It already was, it's true. Hi, I'm Colin Gray. I'm currently an assistant professor up at Purdue University, just up the road. I lead an undergraduate and graduate program in user experience design. Undergraduate program is one of the first in the country in that area, and I actually brought 2 of my undergrads along with me so they can tell you after the fact how well or not well we're doing on any given day. They just presented their first paper at a conference, which is fantastic. So I graduated with my PhD from IU in 2014, focusing on design education work, and it's still what I do today. What else do you want me to introduce about myself besides that? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, research. I lead a lab called the UXP2 Lab, UX Pedagogy and Practice, or Pedagogy Times Practice. And really we focus on the intersections of multiple fields, so human-computer interaction, instructional design and technology, engineering education, that kind of stuff. And then we also look at the intersections of design theory, design education, and design practice, and all of the wonderful synergies that can result among those. We're currently focusing pretty heavily on design ethics, mostly because the National Science Foundation gave us money, and so we're doing fun things with that money. If you saw the talk just before this on ethical engagement, that's one sort of section of dark patterns work that we're starting to look at. And then we're also spinning up some more work studying the subreddit asshole design. So as one of my students said, asshole design is now in print, so we can say it's an academic word.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gray. So let's see who wants to go to the next. Dr. Howard?
I figured you're going to pick me.
You are the one who are the biggest on the screen now.
Yeah, I can see my sweater on the screen. It's very distracting. My name is Craig Howard. I graduated in 2002. I teach at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I teach, half of my appointment is in the master's program, where we teach a fully synchronous program, 100% online. So it's one of the few programs that's fully synchronous and completely online. The other half of my time is in the Learning Design and Technology PhD program. It's a fledgling program. We've transitioned out of a transdisciplinary program into something a little bit more focused. And that program is in its infancy. This is the first year we've accepted a student, so we'd have 2 students in that PhD program, and we've got a couple more coming in next year. So in that program, I teach the course in discourse analysis, and I also will teach a trends and issues class for the doctoral program. That's all I had planned to say. If you want me to keep going, you better strap in because it'll take a while.
Okay, thanks. How about Dr. Ho?
Hi, my name is Young Ho, and I got my degree at IU in 2016. So I was there from 2008 to 2016, and I'm currently at Empire State University in Kansas. And this is my 3rd year teaching there. And mostly I'm teaching both graduate courses and undergraduate IT courses like W200.
Maybe following Dabe. Dr. Lee.
So I envy, sorry. I envy Colin because he can see the audience and we can't. So is there any way that you can turn the camera to the audience so that I can see? Like,
Okay. Mindy, how can we turn the camera to the audience? Oh, it's kind of automatically tracking.
oh, okay. Okay.
Is it automatically tracking Colin?
Yeah, it's.
Oh, hi. There's people.
Yes, one person.
Well, that's seriously. There's only one person at the panel.
Oh my god. Oh no.
Yeah, I don't know how to do.
It does not do
How
the
to
job.
do that.
Dabe.
I don't know how to turn the.
Oh, hey. That's a familiar person. Okay, so I will just go ahead while you figure out how. So my name is Dabe Lee. I'm an assistant professor here at Emporia State University, which you can tell that I'm a colleague of Dr. Yeol He, and I'm also his wife. We were dating for 5 years before coming to IU, so we were married at the time. And we are lucky to be here at Emporia together as assistant professors. And this was not my first job. My first job was at Sam Houston State University. That was also fully online PhD EDD program, which I enjoyed a lot, but I now enjoy being with my family.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories. And then last but not the least, Dr. Mayer, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Rod Myers. I'm currently instructional consultant for the School of Education at IU Bloomington. For the past 6 years, I've been teaching part-time for the IST program and also occasionally at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Yes, where Dr. Howard is. Congratulations to Craig, by the way, for graduating in 2002 before he even started the program.
What? 2012.
Oh, okay.
Did I say 2002?
Yeah, that's what I thought you said. I also finished in 2012.
Same year. Okay, thank you all for introducing yourself. So as I mentioned, I will ask the question first, and then we will follow up with question and answer time with the audience. So first, I would like to ask you, so what inspired you to come to educational technology field and also end up to IU PhD program? And so what are your expectations for working in the academic field?
Okay, I guess I'll lead off here. I was a reluctant academic. When I first came to IU, I was coming off of a job doing consulting in an instructional design consultancy, but I was working as an art director where I primarily designed visuals. I decided to leave that job and apply for PhD programs, and honestly, I didn't know exactly what I was looking for at the time. Fortunately, I ended up applying to several different programs, got accepted here and at Purdue, ironically enough, and a couple others, and ended up coming to IU. The decision was very clear as soon as I talked to Professor Elizabeth Bowling and realized that we had very similar interests in design and the nature of design. And so that really kickstarted my experience in academia. And by year 2, I was sold and I knew that I was going to end up with a career in academia. What makes me a little bit different from the rest of the panelists is that I strayed very far from my School of Education roots. So I'm one of the people that's out of the mainstream a little bit. I work in a college of technology and work with lots of different folks in that environment.
So who want to do the next?
I can tell my story, how I came.
couldn't hear you, Dr. Howard.
Oh, I'll speak louder. Maybe that will help. From 1999. Oh, you want me to stop? I can.
Oh, we couldn't. Let's
Okay,
see.
from 1999 to 2004, Or are there questions?
Maybe Dr. Lee can try whether you can, can you try whether we can hear you?
Me?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Right now, yeah.
But you weren't able to hear Craig?
No. Dr. Harold, can you talk again?
Maybe I'll move my microphone closer to my mouth.
It works now. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I can go if you want me to go.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. From 1999 to 2006, I was a faculty member in Japan. And during that time, I was also working with Cambridge University Press. And I had hoped to move into a tenure track position based on a publication record. And I learned over those years that it was going to be very difficult to get some of my more academic articles published. I could publish learning materials, but I was having difficulty publishing anything academic. And my department head told me that I should go back and get a PhD so I could learn how to write a methods section. So that was my inspiration to come back to the United States, and to how I selected Indiana was primarily by asking people in other programs which program in the US was doing the most work and had the broadest range of things. So I managed to get my hands on a program from AECT, and saw Indiana popping up a lot. And so I applied to Indiana, and then had a conversation at 3 o'clock in the morning on the phone with Kurt Bonk. And that was where history was written. And after that, I decided that I would be headed to IU.
Okay, thank you. Next, who want? Dr. Ho, maybe we can follow the previous sequence.
Yeah, I can do that. So my first career is in corporate setting, and my task was doing international trading. And I did enjoy my task, but the situation was really difficult. Like less human manpower, but a lot of work, and we're going through a very tough time in terms of the workload. So by the time as well, I kind of volunteered to help HR department for recruiting the new employees and doing the kind of orientation for the new employees. And I really enjoyed that aspect, but I didn't really think about changing my career at that time. But having this difficult time emotionally and physically, and actually Dr. Lee's sister, she got a master's in IDT field at that time, and she was working as an instructional designer at one of the university. And she came to Korea for like summer break, and what we heard from her lifestyle, her work, her task, and it was really intriguing. So we, maybe Tabe and I, made a really impulsive decision to quit our job and study for the GRE and apply for this PhD program. And since she was in the field already, she's very familiar with which school is the best. And she recommended us, you should apply IU, like FSU, like some of the big names in the field. So that's how I first came to decide I want to go for study abroad, and IU was my choice.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Dr. Lee want to
Yeah,
add something?
sure. So my undergraduate degree was in business, and I was a business analyst after that. And working for the company was actually working for the company, not for me. So it was more like contributing to the value that the company cared for. It's more like for them to make more money than for me to contribute to the value that I care for. So I made up my mind to change the major to education, influenced by my sister as well. And then we applied a bunch of schools because we wanted to be together. And you and actually, no, I need money.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's Dr. Mayer.
Yes.
Thank you.
So my backstory is a lot longer than everybody else's, so I'll just cut to the salient part. In the mid-90s, I was working as a webmaster for Santa Clara University in California, and I worked with the guy who was then the only instructional technologist for the university. And that was my introduction to the field, and I thought, based on the work he was doing and his background, I thought that it seemed like an interesting and appropriate field for me. So I started a master's program at San Jose State University. And for a class project there, I interviewed several instructional technologists and instructional designers working in higher ed. And a common theme that came up was that they felt like faculty members looked at them more as technologists rather than as people who could help them with their teaching. And because of that, I decided if that was what I wanted to do, I really should get a PhD. So I investigated programs. IU's program came right to the top. I did also apply to Wisconsin because they had a real strong focus on games for learning, which is a research interest of mine. And I was accepted to Wisconsin, and then like Dabe, IU gave me a School of Ed fellowship, and I couldn't pass that up. So that made the decision easier for me. And I started in January of 2007.
Okay, thank you all for sharing your inspiring experiences with us. So you all talked about what led you to this field and at IU. So the following question I would like to ask you, currently we have several doctoral students in our program. Some of them, they were maybe interested in pursuing the academic job. For the students who are looking for jobs in the next 1 or 2 years, do you have any suggestions for us? And then is there some resources that you want to share with us?
I feel like I'm always going to always be the negative voice in this respect. Make sure that an academic career is really what you want. Like really, 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 really. Sort of like I try to talk people out of doing a PhD too, because you have to really be sure that that's what you want. Higher education is a hard job, and it's harder than it probably has been historically, both to get into a good job and then to be successful in that job. And so you have to have enough fortitude and strength to actually be able to make it a successful venture for you. Also sort of know what kind of job you really want if you decide that academia is the correct path. There's a wide landscape, even within traditional instructional design and technology, in terms of institution types, from very teaching focused to very research focused and other things in between. And so you might really like doing research now, but research plus teaching plus all the other things that make an academic career can be quite trying at times. And so it can be incredibly rewarding as well. I feel like I've sort of hit the jackpot. I have amazing students and I get to do awesome research too. But that is unfortunately not commonly the case, that everything just works out. So take my negative views with a grain of salt.
Your experiences. Dr. Lee, do you want to share your suggestions with us?
Me? Dr. Lee or Howard?
Dr. Lee, yeah, Dabe, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I will be the positive voice here, because as a woman, you have a lot of other responsibilities. I understand that responsibility is big, but mommy's responsibility is in nature, it's bigger when you have kids, and I like the flexibility of this position that I couldn't get in the corporate setting. So if you can get the faculty job, that's awesome. because you can, so spring break is off, summer break is off, so you can be with your children, and whenever your children are sick, you can just have a day off and you can work after they fall asleep. So that's awesome. Particular resources that I recommend is higher ed jobs. It's HIGHEREDJOBS. That one, and Chronicle Higher Education. So those are two job sites for academic positions, and it's very helpful if you just keep looking at it to get a sense what kind of qualifications they look for, so that you can be prepared for those qualifications. And you can kind of see the trends. So now I see a lot of VR and AR and learning analytics. So when you decide on your dissertation, it's good to have a research that hot, because mine was not, and it was kind of hard for me to get a position, because the most important thing is the fit between you and the position. So if you try to make your fit more hotter and more trendy, it will be easier to get a job. So that was my 2 cents.
Thank you for sharing your experiences from the female perspective and the twin topic perspective. So who want to share your experience next?
I can go next.
Okay.
I think Dabe mentioned a very good point of choosing a topic which is very hot in the field right now at the time of applying for the position. And it's the best situation if you really want to focus on one area of your interest, and you can get a perfect job, your dream school, dream faculty colleagues with the same interest. But that doesn't really happen a lot, like Colin mentioned, right? So like practical perspective, it's important to have really focused area of your research and interest, but you may want to think about widening your experience in different areas, so that based on their different job postings, you can kind of tailor your experience and expertise toward that various requirement from various positions. So focus on your area, that's good, but I still recommend you find more ways to widen your experience with other faculty research groups or other opportunities, so that you can have at least some experience, some expertise in wider interest areas, so that you can tailor your application to different positions. But like Tabe mentioned, the fit is the most important point.
May I add something? So one of my advisors said that you can work on what are trendy right now, and then after you are tenured, you can work on what you want. And I didn't listen, and I kind of regret it. So, well, yeah.
And she mentioned Chronicle Data and higher ed jobs. And there's one more popular site, InsideHigherEd.com. That's also a place where they post the job openings. And you can also subscribe to the listserv, like IT Forum listserv, and also you have to follow Facebook groups, like special interest groups. They often post job announcement in their own group as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ho. Dr. Mayer, do you want to share your experience with us?
Sure. I think I'm probably an example of what Colin was talking about. Because when I started my PhD program, as I'd mentioned, my goal was to get a PhD and then return to higher ed and work with faculty in an instructional consulting position. And during my PhD, I sort of got enamored with the idea of doing research and then being a faculty member. And I started down that path and interviewed for a couple of faculty positions. But my wife and I decided that we really liked Bloomington. Plus, I don't think I did a good job on the math of figuring out that by the time I finished my PhD and then got a faculty position and then spent 7 years trying to get tenure, and then I would be just a few years away from retirement. And so I wasn't sure that I wanted to work that hard on getting tenure. So, you know, I decided to follow an alternative path, and for a long time that was teaching part-time, and that happened just through personal professional connections. And then also I did some instructional design consulting, which was very fulfilling for me because I love doing design work. So I would say I would really emphasize meeting people in the field. If you want to be in academia, go to academic conferences and meet people, because, you know, when jobs come up, if you already know someone who's at that university, that's your foot in the door just that much farther. So AECT, for example, a great place to meet other academics in our field. I've met some really great people through that organization. And it helped me to get, I think it helped me to get some interviews when I was looking for a faculty position.
In your different experience, like we have professors in HCI field now, we have professors focusing on consultation and professor in education technology field. So currently in your different areas, so could you please share one or two most successful things that you think you have already done so far? And then explain why do you think it's very successful things you have done. Sure. You can, yeah, you can go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Dr. Howard, how about you continue the last question first, and then you can go forward to the second.
You know, it's okay to skip me because
I'm just looking out for you, Craig.
I've got a thick skin at this point, and I can take it. No, what I was going to say, if I had my turn, was if you take a look at everybody on this panel, nobody stopped at their first job. I mean, the first job out of a PhD, I think there's a fair bit of cutting your teeth. You know, my first job out of the PhD was at Texas A&M, and it wasn't destined to be my last job. So it doesn't, the first job out of the PhD shouldn't, I don't think you should be all that concerned with a perfect fit, because the road doesn't stop there. And there's a lot more adventure to have. And yeah, keep going to AECT and collect your lanyards and give them out to your doctoral students the next time you go.
And continue with the next question. What's your personal accomplishment that you think most successful thing so far you have done?
I really don't know. I have no idea. I don't really know what you consider an accomplishment. I'm kind of taking it day by day.
Anybody else?
So I want to maybe talk about this idea of fit a little bit more, because it came up in sort of positive and negative lights. Honestly, I don't think that you know how good the fit is going to be until you've been in an institution for a couple of years. I mean, you can have optimistic ideas about fit, and so is the department that hires you, but you don't really know until things play out. So I'll just share a brief snippet of my coming to Purdue. So I did a postdoc for a year, which was really helpful in getting me involved in engineering education, and then ended up at Purdue. And the first 2 years, I was on a 60-40 split. So 60% in my home department, trying to build a brand new undergraduate program. I built out 6 courses in my first 2 years that were brand new courses. And I was also appointed in a transdisciplinary incubator, focusing on the first competency-based degree program at a research intensive. And so between those two things, like, nothing was stable and everything was chaotic. And Craig came up and visited me at that point in my early career at Purdue and can probably speak to how chaotic life was. And so it didn't really take until my 3rd year when I started to figure out that things were settling down, and I got rid of my split appointment with the dean's approval, that I started to sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel and feel like, yes, this is actually a really good fit for where I'm at right now. So sometimes fit has to grow on you. It is important to have some fit going in, because otherwise everyone's just going to sort of be at your neck in a hostile department. Mine's been pretty supportive. In terms of greatest accomplishments, I might frame this up as things that I'm proud of and things that have failed utterly. So the thing that I just talked about, that failed utterly. The split appointment that I wanted to work out didn't work out as well as I wanted to, and neither did the transdisciplinary program that I was working with undergrads. It's still around, but it wasn't what we sort of dreamed it would be. And so that, you know, life happens, stuff happens, not everything works out well, but taking risks are really important. In terms of the things that I'm most proud of, I mentioned my undergrads presenting here today, and I'm super proud of the research program that I've been able to start to build at Purdue. I have 10 students on my team, 6 of those are undergrads, and they're just chomping at the bit to publish, to be engaged in scholarly work, and I just can't keep up with them. So that makes me feel like something might be going right.
So I attended their presentation, did awesome job. Thank you. Next, Dr. Ho.
Oh, me? I don't know what I can say. So I kind of feel proud of the our program and the Teachers College at ESU. So we have the first teachers education program in the States, and from the Teachers College, they grew out of the university and the first school of education program in the state. So we have a strong teacher ed program at school and in the States. And like based on my experience and at IU, I kind of contributed to revamping of their IT courses for undergraduate student, pre-service teachers. So I feel proud of that part. And also working at the Region University, I don't know, the internal competition for the internal grant, like university grants or innovative grant, I think we get more like high possibility for getting that internal grant compared to research-run university like huge university. So getting this a small internal grant as a stepping stone toward the next step is I think what I have accomplished so far.
Dr. Ho, Dr. Lee, do you want to?
Sure. So this question was a funny question. Kind of, do I need to brag myself, or what are my key accomplishments, key successes? What are the key successes? So when I look back, the 10 years that I was here in the US pursuing the degree and working as a professor, I think my biggest accomplishment is achieving work-life balance between my professional as well as personal life. So now I have 2 boys, and I did not give up on my career while raising those 2 energetic and boys. So I had my first one when I was working on the dissertation, and the first one was very needy. So he woke up like 10 times a night, every night, and even 20 times. So when I was interviewing for a position, those nights I actually couldn't get sleep, but I just somehow went through the dissertation phase by working on the dissertation every night with the crying baby, and sometimes I was nursing and then working on the dissertation. So I kind of proud of myself being not giving up on the way. And I had the second one when I was at my first job, and I didn't have any sick days. So I resumed my work after 2 days that I gave birth to my second one. So I feel proud that I went through that time, and now they are all going to school, so I can just work as much as I can during while they are not here with me. So that, I guess that was my biggest accomplishment so far.
That is awesome to be a mom and also finish your PhD and achieve so many things these years. Thank you. Dr. Mayer?
I'd have to say, first of all, going through the program, I met a lot of really great people, and they become good friends. Craig and Colin are really close friends of mine. Dabe and Yoel are good friends. Dabe and I published a book chapter together. Craig and I published an article together. And those were really rewarding experiences, working with people I like and doing things that I like to do. I was fortunate to have Dr. Reigeluth invite me to co-edit the most recent edition of his Green Book series on instructional design theories and models. And that was a really satisfying process to go through, editing an academic volume like that. But really, I'm starting a new job, and I've got a whole new research base that I need to learn. And I'm excited about, what's going to be happening in the next few years for me. And I think probably my best accomplishments are yet to come. So check back with me in a few years.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing your accomplishments with us. So I think maybe our audience has already been eager to ask a question to our panelists. So how about we open up the question for our audience?
I want to say hello. My name is Carla Harper. I'm just starting out in the EDD IST program. I have to give a shout out to those of you who are at the University of Tennessee. I'm so excited. My undergraduate degree is in electrical engineering. I graduated from UT Knoxville way back in '88. So I'm so excited to know that you guys are, UT is still alive and going on. But I like to talk with Dr. Myers about his career. I think that I'm in a unique position. I'm a little older, got grown kids. So by the time I get my doctorate, I will be somewhere between, I don't know, and retirement. I have grandchildren. I just had my granddaughter had her first this past year. So I'm not necessarily looking toward going for tenure at a university. I currently work at a university now as an electrical engineer. So my question to you is, when you decided upon not going for tenure, and you talk about consulting, what do you have your own business as you consult, or are you on staff as at UT or at other places? And did you get your positions or your jobs that you have now? Are they like consultant positions like you would in a corporation?
Great questions. Yeah, I was 52 when I finished my PhD, and so doing the math, it was going to be, if you figure 7 years to tenure, I was going to be 59, and so not really that far away from retirement. So the consulting that I've done, first of all, Colin would be much better to talk about in terms of consulting because he, I think, was really good at it. I'm a terrible business person, and that makes for a terrible consultant because you don't get a lot of business that way. I think I'm a good consultant, but not a good business person. And so the consulting that I did was through, again, people that I knew, who knew my strengths, my knowledge base and skill set, and knew that I would be good to work with. And so, for example, it's an international company, but they have a local branch here in Bloomington, GP Strategies. They do instructional consulting, and they wanted to develop a game, a simulation game to train sales managers, to train salespeople who wanted to be sales managers. And so they brought me in to work on that. And that was probably close to 6 months of work on that, but not full-time work. And that was really fun to do. And I was used to doing projects completely myself. And so working with a team, and I had a programmer I was working with, so I wasn't doing the programming myself as I have in the past. So I found that really good. I also consulted with a startup that a couple of our, well, they were PhD students at the time, Tiffany Roman and Matt Callison. They started up an ed tech company that was creating software for peer review. And they asked me to come on as sort of their chief technology officer to help them make decisions regarding the technologies they were using and to work with their programmers and things like that. So again, it was just from people I knew that I found jobs that way. And during all that time, I was also teaching part-time. Now I'm working as an instructional consultant for the School of Ed, which is sort of different from the kinds of consulting that I was talking about there. This is much more focused just on helping the people who teach in the School of Ed to improve their teaching or improve their use of technology in some way. So Carla, I hope that answered your question.
Mayor. Any other questions?
Hi, yes, you can see me. Okay. Hi, I'm Latrice Booker. I am in the IST EDD online program, and I am curious, what do you all think with this 2025 cliff for higher education, where the traditional students, there won't be as many traditional students, that population is going to decline. What is your advice to people interested in going into academia?
I think we're going to have a lot more positions that require instructional technology knowledge that are not faculty positions in instructional technology programs. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and we're seeing a lot of programs in online learning open up. We've got a master's, within our master's program, there's a certificate in online teaching and learning, and we draw people from across campus. And you know, I've interviewed at a few departments for instructional technology type programs, is like a half appointment type program. So there's definitely going to be opportunity, but it's also going to require people in our field to have a broader vision of where we fit in, and the ability to speak to those different disciplines is going to become more and more valuable, I think.
Yeah, I'll agree with Craig there. So I think it's actually going to be bigger than people anticipate. So we have the population cliff that you're talking about based on the financial crisis. And then you also have the coming cliff based on all of these, I mean, the threat of automation and lots of other things that is still very poorly understood. And so my advice would be to invest in disciplines that have a very low chance of being automated. And I mean that very seriously. So like, I'm in a department where we have a web dev major. Web dev as we know it is going to be dead in 10 years. Like, it's not that web development won't be happening, but it will be happening at such an increased pace and an increased sense of automation that it's not going to be necessary to get a degree in it in the way that we think about it right now. And so like, we build out a program in user experience design. We're trying to design for that, for like the 10 years out, where we have no idea what the technology is going to look like, but we hope the theory is going to be enough. And so what I would urge, maybe looking back towards an instructional design audience, is to learn how to talk to people from multiple disciplines and get them to get along and help them synthesize the concepts across those spaces, because I think that's where most of the promise is in higher education in the future, particularly in residential programs.
Does any other panelists want to add your opinions here?
So more non-traditional learners means more lifelong learners. So you will see a lot of influx of those lifelong learners. So we have a good potential and good possibility for having those learners into this academia, but at the same time, we still have some kind of risk involved. So right now, with those new population of lifelong learners, so universities are trying to recruit more and more non-traditional learners, and they're providing like a short-term format, like 1 year master program, 7-week class. So you have to kind of risk the quality of education with marketing and recruiting those new learners. So we have the possibility of those lifelong learners, but at the same time, we have to overcome the risk of the quality of education too.
Okay, if maybe we can have 3 minutes to have the last question.
Hi, my name is Cassandra, and my question, and I'm an undergraduate from Purdue University, and my question is, what are your thoughts about going into industry and then coming back to academia after a few years? And do you have any advice for how to make the most out of your industry experience to make it applicable to going back to grad school?
I think that's a great way to build your career. I think all of you would agree. You can do both. Either way, you can pursue you can work for the company and pursue a master's degree or doctorate degree. That way you can combine between the practical experience and theoretical knowledge. That's awesome, but that will require a lot of time and energy during 5 or I don't know how many years. Another way I can think of is you do the practical experience, but engage in a research team like Dr. Colleen Gray has while you are working for the company to get publications out of your practical experience while you are working, but not pursuing a degree at the same time. In that way, you can use your knowledge as a theoretical knowledge in your practical analysis, practical experience, as well as get the publication out of it. But you don't have to spend much time for taking classes and other things.
I would say, after having worked in educational publishing and now in an academic position, I kind of feel that with life expectations, being a dad, I couldn't do both. At least I couldn't do both well. So from my perspective, you know, there's only so much time in the day, and you do have to make some decisions. So I don't think it's easy to toggle between the two spaces because they are very different, and they do ask for different skill sets. Something that we have in our program is a industry liaison person who comes in and speaks to our master's students, and she speaks in a different she has a different lingo than an academic, than a scholar does, and it's very important for us to have that voice in our program. But I don't think she would do well in an academic position because she doesn't function like a professor does. So I do think they're two different worlds, and it's surely possible to toggle between the two, but it would take a significant amount of effort.
Any other panelists want to have a final comment? So, okay, thank you all. I think we are running out of time. I really appreciate all the panelists here. So let's give them a big round of applause for them. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming to this panel. And then our next session will be the keynote speaker, Dr. Roy Radin. So we can have a short break and then you can come back here. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming here. Bye. Wait, stop.
we still on speaker, or did they turn us off? Can we chat now that the talk is over?
You can stay for the keynote, of course. The Zoom link is. So, thank you so much for offering your time to be our panelist today. We really appreciate your time and effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Craig.
Bye, Joel. Congrats on Emporia. We've got a boy coming in May.
Congratulations.